Hi everyone, welcome to the channel Sluggers Blue for your CAT VRC preparation. VRC, that is verbal ability and reading comprehension, one of the three sections of the common admission test, also known as the CAT. And the exam that is conducted by the Indian Institutes of Management, the IIMs, for admission to their prestigious programs. So this particular video is part of a course titled An Anthology of RCs that I intend to run on the platform YouTube. And the course is supposed to help anyone who might be preparing for CAT, and especially with the reading comprehension part of the VRC section. And as most of CAT aspirants would know, that the reading comprehension questions make up the majority of the VRC section, right? So almost 70% of it. So that's what this particular course or this is about, series of videos is about. Now, before we go any further, before I delve into the details of the pedagogy of this course and how do we intend to go about it, there are a few assumptions that I've made on on part of the viewers who might be watching this video that I want to be that I want to clarify at the very outset, right? So see, guys, this video being one of the very first videos of the channel, I could have started with something on the lines of, say, surface level content like what is the paper pattern of the CAT exam, or let's say what are the types of questions which are asked in the VRC section of the CAT exam. Now there are two reasons why I've decided not to do that, at least at this point of time, and instead directly delve into the subject matter. The first reason is that this kind of surface level content, and there's nothing wrong with that, is quite widely available already on the platform, on YouTube and on the internet in general. And that's the first reason. So I don't think at this point of time it makes, it adds substantial marginal value to the aspirant, CAT aspirant. Second is that most of the CAT aspirants, given that we are just a few months away from the CAT exam, would already be quite well aware of such information, such surface level information, important information, but surface level nonetheless. So that's the reason why I've decided that the, the resources I have available at my disposal, in terms of content, time, energy, etc., would be better spent if I just jumped into the subject matter right away, and that's what I've tried to do here by creating this course. Okay, so yeah. All right, guys. So with that out of the way, let me give you a very brief introduction of into the course about the course. Minimal intro, basically. Why a minimal intro? Why a brief intro? Because we already have plans to create a separate introductory video of the course that will talk about the underlying pedagogy and rationale of the course, and then why it has been created the way it has been created. So that will be a separate in-depth video. But until we are able to get that ready for you, a minimal intro will have to do. Okay. So an anthology of RCs. Anthologies, guys, is basically a word that stands for a collection of works that have something similar, that have a similar form or similar subject or a topic, right? In this case, this course is an anthology or basically a compilation of RCs. The similarity across all of these RCs is that all of them happen to be really good quality RCs, and all of them happen to be RCs which have been asked in previous year's papers of CAT, and also from a variety of genres like management, literature, science, psychology, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, so I'll give you some more course information here. So guys, see, there's going to be 40 sessions. There's going to be a 40 session course, and in each session we'll be discussing one RC, one good quality CAT RC, and these 40 RCs will be divided across 8 genres, 8 categories. Okay, we've ensured that we take we attribute equal weightage to each of these genres, because we would want, as a learner or as an aspirant, you'd want to be familiar with across all genres of language, or English, or writing, so when preparing for your CAT VRC section, because you don't really know what genres, what you don't really know from what genres the CAT might be, or the IIMs might be picking their passages, right? So to ensure that you're not you don't get stumped on the detail. You want to ensure substantial familiarity across these genres, and that's the reason why we've given equal weightage to all the 8 genres. And for each of the RCs in every of these sessions, this is the way we'll go about the discussion of the RCs. We'll talk about, we'll explain the passage in the utmost detail using schematics, using diagrams, and then we'll do the in-depth analysis of questions as well as options, and followed by discussion on the vocabulary that you may have difficult vocabulary that you may have come across in the passage, and then of course difficulty level analysis of the passages as well as the questions. And finally, we'll close every session with a set of suggestive readings. And these suggestive readings will mainly be based on the particular RC that we have solved in that particular passage. For example, if you solved an RC from the economics genre, then readings pertaining to the same genre will be provided so that you can get some more exposure and familiarity in the same genre. Okay, and then some takeaways. These takeaways will be on the lines of what are the corrective steps that you can take to ensure that you don't commit the same errors that you may have committed in this particular RC. So that's about the course information. All right, let's come to the next part, which is who are the uh, who all are the aspirants, who can benefit from this course. Okay, so guys, the first set of aspirants who can benefit, or viewers who can benefit from this course would be the ones who generally feel that VRC is the most vulnerable part for them, right? They're probably able to manage the DILR and the quantitative aptitude sections, but when it comes to VRC, they really feel that like somehow they want to just clear the cutoffs, or they're really underconfident when it comes to VRC, right? They feel that it's their Achilles heel. So yeah, so they can definitely benefit from this. See, it's a very practical course. It's just 40 sessions and 40 cat RCs, and then while discussing these RCs, there's going to be a lot of methods and techniques that we'll be discussing as part of the discussion. So they can really benefit from these. The second category of learners would be who are able to get good scores but not very consistently. The mock scores are really drastic, so they sometimes they are able to score really good scores, and then the next mock it totally plummets down to maybe in the 60s, 70s, maybe even in the 50s, and again they are able to go into the top 90s, 98, 97, and again it comes down. The exact numbers are not important here. What is important here is that if you are someone who faces this problem of inconsistent mock scores across VRC in the VRC sections, then this is a course that can definitely benefit you. Finally, there might be learners or aspirants who may have been able to achieve a certain reasonable average score that they're able to achieve, that they're able to ensure in every VRC section of every mock, and but their scores have plateaued, right? And they're not able to go beyond a certain point. For example, like someone might be able to score consistently 97.5 or 98 percentile, 98.5 percentile, 99 percentile, but no, they're not able to go beyond that. They're just stuck there. So this course might also help you break through that plateau. Okay, so that's the cohort of all the people who can benefit from this course. Next, let me talk a little bit about the schedule and cadence of these sessions. So we'll take 1 week as an example, right? So guys, this in every week, see, every genre will be dedicated one complete week, right? So for every genre, we have 5 RCs as we noticed here, and so in every week we'll be taking up one genre. For example, let's say the first genre is economics and management. So in the first week, we'll be taking 5 passages of economics and management, each uploaded on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So these 5 days, Monday to Friday, I'll be uploading one session each for 1 RC each for the first genre. And on Saturday, we'll have a live doubt clearing class on YouTube to clarify the doubts of all of these passages, and and other preparation related doubts that you might have. Sundays will be off. So that's just for one genre in 1 week, right? And then this is something that we'll be doing for all the 8 genres. That means that it's going to be an 8 week course. So 5 sessions every week for 8 weeks, 2 months. Now, with the schedule and cadence out of the way, let me give you a very brief introduction about myself, my profile. So guys, my name is Anupam Mishra. I've worked with brands like UNICEF, Hotstar, Apollo Tires, and Unacademy in the past. I'm myself a graduate of IIM Lucknow, Indian Institute of Management Lucknow, and yeah, so that's about me. You can check out my profile on LinkedIn if you need some more information. Okay, so all right, guys. So let's talk about the flow of the session. So you must be able to, you must have noticed this tracker here at the bottom of the session, right? And this has been put here to help you, navigate through the video with convenience. So every block tells you about the part of the video which we are situated at that point of time. For example, we are still in the minimal introduction part of the video, and after this will be followed by passage information, it will be followed by passage explanation, and so on and so forth. So whichever part is highlighted tells you that that's the part of the video that we are currently situated in at that point of time, situated in. Okay, now see, I'm just reproducing this here to explain, to tell you, or to suggest to you how you can go about watching the session, right? So so we'll be solving a passage, right? So what we have done is, the first alternative in terms of how you can go about watching the session is pause, attempt, and proceed. What does pause, attempt, and proceed means? That means before you go to the passage, before you go to the explanation and the central idea and the questions of the passage, you can pause the video, attempt the passage by yourself, and then come back to the video, unpause it, and then proceed. Well, where will you attempt the passage? Link to attempt the passage is available in the video description. You can find it in the description of the video. Okay, so once you have attempted the passage, you can come back and watch the video again. Now, at what time should you pause? Well, you can pause either right after the passage information has been shared. Passage information is basically just which year of CAT was this passage asked in, and like number of words and number of questions. Nothing, no internal subject details of the passage are shared, more or less, right? So you can pause right after the passage information video information section, and then go attempt the passage and then come back. Or what you can do is, in case you have been facing substantial difficulties in VRC and especially in RCs, then what you can do is, you can, like you're starting just from basics, from really basics. Then what you can do is, you can go through the explanation of the passage and the central idea, and then go and attempt the passage, and then come back and unpause the video and watch the rest of the section, right? But this is something that I'll suggest to only the learners who are facing really excessive difficulties in understanding the RCs. I would definitely suggest to most of the learners, I would suggest that you pause the video at this point of time, attempt the passage by yourselves, and come back and then proceed. Okay, that's the first alternative, by the way. Now, second alternative is, well, you might just want to, what you can do is, you can just read and solve the passage on screen along with me, right? You can pause. So when we get to the passage screen, you can just pause the video and you can read the passage from the screen. And when we get to the questions, you can again pause the video and you can solve the questions, right? That's the second alternative. All right. So yeah, that's so you see, you can read and solve on screen along with the tutorial. That's what this line means. Okay, so let's proceed. All right, guys, so let's start with the passage information section. The course is, of course, an anthology of RCs. It's the first genre that we're going to take up is economics and management. And the first RC that we'll be taking up here will be, well, the economics of sports mega events. That's the title that I've given this RC. It has 342 words with three questions, 342 words, three questions. So you can see the words to question ratio here is around 114, as you can see, 114 per question, right? Usually this ratio for CAT passages hovers around the number 100 words per question, usually. By the way, this is a useful measure to keep track of, to understand whether a passage is lengthy or not so lengthy, instead of just knowing the number of words, because, well, this gives you the length despite the number of, it also takes into account the number of questions that the passage offers you to answer. Anyhow, we'll talk about the passage length and the other such relevant parameters later on. Let me give you further information about the passage. It happens to be a passage that was asked in the exam in CAT in 2017's first lot. The source of the passage itself is from the New York Times. It's from a New York Times article. The link for the same will be, you must be able to find it in the description. Authored by Andrew Zimbalist, an economics professor at Smith's College, who was also a sports economist. So that's the passage information. Okay. So at this point of time, if you want to attempt the passage by yourself before the explanation, you can do that, because after this slide, once we move on to the next slide, I'll be starting with the passage explanation. So yeah. All right, guys. So let's start the passage explanation section of the video. So as you can see, your screen is divided into two sections, two parts. The first part on the left side is the part where the passage should appear in a while. Yeah, so there you go. And the right side, the space right here is the space where we'll have the schematic diagrams appear parallelly as I speak. Okay, so as I read each and every line, the schematic diagrams shall appear automatically to help you understand, to ensure that you understand every line of the passage to that most clarity possible. Okay, so let's begin. Let's begin with the reading. So the first line: do sports mega events like the Summer Olympic Games benefit the host city economically? Economically. Okay, so as you can see, the diagram has appeared. Basically, it represents the what the sentence says. It just represents the same sentence, the same idea in a schematic manner. Makes it easy to visualize and understand, right? So, the sports mega events like the Summer Olympics benefit the host cities in an economic manner, like economically. So the author has essentially posed a question here. These symbols are the symbols for economic benefits. So, and then, by the way, for those of you who may have attended the passage already, you must have realized that, well, this one singular question is essentially what the whole passage has been about. That whether the Olympics, whether Olympic-like sports mega events, whether they actually benefit the host cities economically or not, and essentially all the arguments and data that is provided in the passage is all driven towards trying to address this question, right? So, yeah, let's come to the next part. Uh, do sports events like Summer Olympics games benefit the host cities economically? Well, it depends, but the prospects are less than rosy. So yeah, so he's basically saying that okay, the answer to this question, that whether they do actually benefit or they don't benefit, that depends on some factors maybe. So the answer can be yes, the answer can be no, right? It depends. But the prospects are less than rosy. That means it is highly likely that they do not, right? The chances are, the odds are in the favor of there being not any benefit, right? That's what he's saying. Okay, coming to the next sentence. The trick is converting several billion dollars in operating costs during the 17-day fiesta of the games into a basis for long-term economic returns. Okay, all right. So this sentence is quite interesting, right? He says that the trick here, in such a scenario, on such a case, the trick, like for what? The trick for what? The trick for ensuring that there is the answer to this question is yes, that the Olympic events might benefit. So the trick by which these events might actually end up benefiting the host cities is to convert the operating costs that is expended by the host cities in conducting the Olympics, to convert the operating costs involved in hosting the Olympics, into a basis for this. This is the symbol for convert. We'll be using this as a symbol for convert. C with an arrow going through. Okay, to convert the Olympic costs, sorry, operating costs into a basis for long-term economic returns, right? What does this actually mean? So I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a hypothetical city X that has been awarded the contract that has been awarded the chance to conduct the Olympics to conduct the next Olympics, right? So now, and let's also suppose that the city X happens to be a not so developed city, right? Happens to be a part of a not so developed country and hence a not so developed city. Not necessarily, that's not the case necessarily always, but let's assume that for now. So okay, so what will happen? So the city, apart from having to build all the sports facilities, the stadiums and everything, it might also have to upgrade its transport systems, for example, right? Because to provide the necessary facilities for the plethora of audience that might be coming to the city for the Olympics, right? So they might want to, they might have to upgrade their transport infrastructure. And let's say this is in terms of, to do that, they end up constructing a metro railway system, right? So now that metro railway system, even after the Olympics are done, even if after the sports mega event has completed, has been convened, you know, even after that, it's not like that they'll dismantle the metro rail system, right? The metro rail system will still be there, right? So essentially what they've done is they have used the operational cost, they've converted the operational cost that they had to expend while creating the metro rail system into a long-term basis for economic return. Because even after the economics, even after the Olympics, not economics, my bad. Even after the Olympics, the metro rail system will still provide economic benefit to the city in some form or the other, right? So that's what the author means to say when he says that the trick is to converting several $billion which are being spent in operating costs during the 17-day fiesta of the games into a basis for long-term economic returns. Okay, I hope that's clear. Let's go to the next part then. These days, the Summer Olympics themselves, these days, the Summer Olympics themselves generate a total revenue of $4 to $5 billion. Okay, but the lion's share of this goes to the International Olympics Committee, the National Olympics Committee, and the international sports federations. Okay, so what he's saying in this sentence is he's basically saying that these days, although the Olympics themselves generate a huge amount of revenue, that is $4 to $5 billion, but lion's share of this, that means the majority of this, goes to one of these three committees. Okay, like the first C1, C2, and C3, right? You don't really necessarily need to memorize the name of these three committees, right? So that's not required. So I've just written it as C1, C2, and C3. The three committees, first one is International Olympics Committee, C1, and the National Olympics Committee, C2, and the International Sports Federation, C3. So most of this revenue that is generated by the Olympics goes to these three committees. Hardly any, so that implies that hardly any revenue that is generated directly from the Olympics reaches the host cities, right? And then let's come to the next part. So, and hence, any economic benefit, any economic benefit would have to flow from the value of the games as an advertisement for the city. One, the new transportation and communication infrastructure, two, that was created for the games, and three, the ongoing use of the new facilities, right? So essentially what the point he has made is that because most of the revenue that is directly generated by the Olympics goes to these three committees and hardly anything comes to the host cities, because of this, if there were to be any economic benefit that were to be availed by the host cities, they will come through one of these three ways, right? The first way would be if the game serve as would have to flow from the game value of the games as an advertisement for the city. First way. Second way is the new transportation and communication infrastructure that will have to be created for the games, right? And finally, the third way could be by the ongoing use, like even after the games have completed, have terminated, even after the mega event has been completed, the ongoing use of the new facilities. These are the only three ways in which there can be any economic benefit at all to the host cities via the by the mega events, right? No other ways, according to the author. Now, before I go to the next paragraph, guys, I want to talk about this one idea. When he says would have to flow from the value of the games as an advertisement for the city. What does this mean? Advertisement for the city, what does it mean? First of all, don't please definitely ensure that you don't confuse this with the advertising revenue derived from the Olympics, right? Advertising revenue derived from the Olympics is different. That will contribute. That will be part of the revenue, total revenue derived. That is derived from the Olympics. That's not what this advertisement for the city is. Advertisement for the city basically talks about a different concept. I'll try to explain that to you here. So say, let's suppose, so see, whenever a city hosts a sports mega event like the Olympics, given the fact that during that event the city gets to be in the limelight of the entire world, right, and of the entire world, it also provides the city with an opportunity to showcase itself as a potential geography, for example, uh, to investors, MNCs, conglomerates, right, in the future, right? That's one advantage. Moreover, it also and at the same time, it also provides the city to an opportunity to showcase itself as also maybe a good travel destination, right? That can be another example to tourists from around the world, right? So each of these scenarios would essentially serve as an advertisement for the city, right? Which might and thus might provide some sort of might manifest in some sort of economic benefit in terms of investments, in terms of increased tourism in the long term, in the upcoming years, right? So that's what the idea of advertisement for the city means here. It does not mean advertisement revenue generated from the Olympics. It means advertisement from the for the cities for factors as I just described earlier, just now. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Okay, now let's come to the next part, next paragraph. Yeah. So evidence suggests that the advertisement effect is far from certain. So the first factor, the first way in which the cities could have benefited from the sports mega event is far from certain. That means it is uncertain. That's what he's saying. The infrastructure benefit depends on the initial condition of the city and the effectiveness of the planning. Okay, so the infrastructure, this benefit, the second way, the infrastructure, transport and infrastructure point, this way depends on, let's take this symbol to be a symbol for depends on, D with these two legs underneath. So this depends on the initial condition of the city, and the effectiveness of planning, right? Fair enough, all right. Let's come to the next part. The facilities benefit is dubious at best for buildings such as velodromes or natatoriums, and problematic for 10, 1 lakh seat Olympic stadiums, right? Okay. So far as the third point, the third factor is concerned, that of the new facilities, right? The third point was ongoing use of new facilities. So far as that factor is concerned, that benefit is dubious at best for buildings such as velodromes and natatoriums. Guys, the velodromes are basically the stadiums or the tracks which are created for bicycle events, for the bicycle racing events, right? That's what velodromes are, and natatoriums are basically the stadiums, the indoor swimming pools and the stadiums which are created for the swimming events. So that's what velodromes and natatoriums are. So he's saying the facilities benefit is dubious at best for buildings such as velodromes and natatoriums, and they are dubious at best for these, and problematic for the 1 lakh seat Olympic stadiums, and problematic for these. All right, fair enough. Let's come to the next part. The latter require a conversion plan for future use. The latter require a conversion plan for future use. Latter is the Olympic stadium, right? Okay, fair. So he's providing some specifics and substantiating examples of this same idea, of the same point, that even this way in which the Olympics or the mega events could have benefited the whole cities is also not practical, also doesn't really work. He's just providing more examples of this here. So he says the latter requires a conversion plan for future use for Olympic stadiums, and the former, that means the velodromes and natatoriums, usually doomed to near vacancy. That means they're never used. They're hardly ever used. Hosting the summer games generally requires 30 plus sports venues and dozens of training centers. Today, the Bird's Nest in Beijing sits virtually empty. Bird's Nest was a title name given, the name of the Beijing Olympic Stadium. Sits virtually empty. While the Olympic Stadium in Sydney costs some $30 million a year to operate. So essentially, guys, starting from this point onwards, the latter hosting, I think yeah, starting from this point onwards, the latter until the last line of this paragraph, the author has simply provided specifics and substantiating examples of the new facilities usage being either dubious or problematic, right? By the way, you should also take this paragraph, this second part of this second paragraph, as an example of the scenario where you can increase your speed of reading the RC, right? See, guys, you read the RC not necessarily for example, you read the RC to understand and to gauge the opinion of the author. and the writer of the passage, right? That's why that should always be the purpose of reading an RC. And especially when you come across examples and when you come across cases where the same idea is being repeated, that is basically an opportunity where you can increase your increase the pace at which you're reading the RC, right? So whenever learners and aspirants come up with the queries that I'm not able to increase my RC speed, and we generally assume that an RC has to be read at a constant rate. Every part of the RC has to be read at a constant rate. That's not the case at all. There are some parts of the RC which might be dense enough, which might be introducing some new idea that needs to be paid, to which you need to pay special attention. You need to go a little slow there. And then there are other parts of the RC where you should definitely use them as an opportunity to to make for the lost time, right? To increase the space of your reading at that point of time. So examples, specifics and substantiating examples can be classified into the second category. Obviously, if there's a question that is pertaining to specifics and substantiating examples, you can you can come back to the point of reference and check. So that's not really so much of a problem. Anyhow, coming to the next part. Part of the problem is that Olympics planning takes place in a frenzied and time-pressured atmosphere of intense competition with the other prospective host cities, not optimal conditions for contemplating the future shape of an urban landscape. So he's saying that part of the problem, right? Part of the problem here is that Olympics planning, even for the cities that have been awarded the chance for planning, for connecting the Olympics, even for them, the planning takes place in a very chaotic atmosphere. When they are competing with other cities for via bids and everything to get the chance, to get the opportunity to host the Olympics. So it's a very chaotic environment in which the planning happens, and that's the reason why. And because it is a chaotic environment, well, the chaotic environment is not an optimal condition for contemplating the future shape of an urban landscape. Okay, so what he means by that is that because of all this time pressure atmosphere and because of the chaotic environment, the planners, the city planners, are not in a position to take into account what should be the proper future shape of the urban landscape, and hence and accordingly create the transport and communication infrastructure, or maybe other whatever other infrastructure that might be required, right? So they are not able to bring in uh, factors of future usage of those facilities into account while creating the plans of changing the urban landscape, right? And that's the reason why later on most of the facilities or most of the infrastructure ends up not getting used, or just staying put, right? So yeah, let's come to the next part. Another part of the problem is that urban land is generally scarce and growing scarcer. The new facilities often stand for decades or longer. Even if they have future use, are they the best use of precious urban real estate? Okay, now he's stated the second problem here. He says that another problem is that these facilities are generally created in an urban landscape. And urban landscape these days is getting scarce, and like the urban land these days in almost all of these cities, major cities, is getting scarce and scarce, right? And hence they are growing dearer and dearer, more and more valuable. So even let's suppose you account for the first problem. Let's suppose by some uh, some sort of miracle, the first problem, people were able to solve the first problem. Even let's say they have, that's what he has said, right? Even if they have future use, let's suppose the first problem is somehow has been circumvented, right? Even in that scenario, do is the construction of such huge infrastructure still the best use of the precious urban real estate? It's a rhetorical question. He's not actually asking a question here. It's a rhetorical. He's just emphasizing his point that even if the first problem is solved, even if you're able to provide more optimal conditions, planning conditions to the planners, and they are able to create uh, infrastructure that can have some future use, can we, even after that, can we necessarily say that that will be the best use of the scarce urban real estate? So essentially he's saying that even after that, even if the planners are able to create the infra in such a way that it will be useful in some manner in the future, even after that, it will still not be the best use of the scarce urban landscape, right? So guys, please also note that the second problem that has been put here has been it might not, it is a very subtle difference, but this has been put in a more bold letters in more bold letters here, right? As you can see here. The reason is because the author has, the way the author has portrayed the second problem here is, he has almost said that the second problem is more overarching in nature, that even if the first problem is solved, the second problem would still prove as one of the major blocks, right? The urban real estate is so scarce that even if the other problems are solved, still it does not make a case, the second problem does not allow to make a case for, building such huge infra or expanding such huge infra for the sports mega events. Anyhow, let's come to the next one. Further, cities must consider the human cost. Residential areas often are raised and citizens relocated without adequate preparation or compensation. Life is made more hectic and congested. Okay, so what he's saying here is, again, so he has given a third problem here now. Okay, further, apart from the first two problems, there's another problem. There's another problem, and the problem is that involves some sort of human cost, right? Human cost of mobilization. He's talking about that he's saying that people, in order to build these huge structures and to this huge infra, which anyways will probably not be used in the future, owing to the first problem. Like in order to build these, residential areas are often razed and citizens relocated without adequate preparation and compensation. So there's obviously this inconvenience, this tremendous inconvenience that is caused to people who used to live in that area, right? So life is made more hectic and congested for them, right, in general. So there's some human cost involved. So again, you have one more problem, and also again, please note that even in this scenario, I have put this in bold. This font is even again bolder than the first problem, because even the second and third problem by the author has been portrayed in a manner that that shows that they are more overarching than the first problem, right? That even if the first problem is resolved, the second and third problems still will remain, right? So yeah, there are, after let's come to the next part. There are, after all, other productive uses that can be made of vanishing fiscal resources. And finally, the author closes with making a case for better use of vanishing fiscal resources. Fiscal resources is basically a term that is generally, an expression that is generally used to refer to the revenue of the government, which will essentially come from taxes, right? So he's basically saying that instead of instead of the host city is expending so much of their uh, of the government revenue, or the revenue that has been gained from the taxes, on creating on investing in the infrastructure for the Olympics and organizing the Olympics, which anyways hardly has any benefit at all. Even if you consider the long-term benefits that could have been provided, all of them are dubious. So it's better, and then considering the other problems that are anyways cannot be which are insurmountable, right? The problem number 2 and problem 3. He's essentially making a case that there can be better use of the vanishing, the already vanishing fiscal resources, or the already uh, you know vanishing government revenue, right? That the government gets from taxes. So the government is better off making uh, different putting that government revenue to a different use than organizing Olympics. That's what the author is trying to say here. Finally, okay. So yeah, guys, so that is the schematic explainer. I hope you were able to understand each and every part of the passage with in complete detail. If at at if there is a certain line, if there's a certain part of the passage which you still might not have understood with as much clarity as could have been possible, you can write that down in the comments section. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to the let's move on to the central idea slide now. All right, guys. So let's come to the central idea now. Okay. Uh, the central idea of the passage can be summarized as follows, can be put here, put forth as follows. So, yeah, let's read. Sports mega events deliver economic benefit to host cities primarily by creating a basis for long-term returns. However, the modes for the same are usually unreliable. Moreover, the paucity of urban landscape and the accompanying human cost make a valid case for considering more productive avenues for fiscal expenditure. Yes, that's exactly what he says. So I'll just take you, see guys, the central idea is derived, the best, one of the best, better ways, I can't say the best ways, but one of the better ways of deriving the central idea could be from something that I call the nodal ideas. Now, what are the nodal ideas? Nodal ideas are basically the most important parts of the author's argument, of the author's primary argument, and which in this case, as you, I'll just demonstrate to you why this example are these. For example, look at the first nodal idea of the author in this passage was uh, economic benefits delivered. Economic benefits are delivered to host cities by mega events by creating a basis for long-term returns, right? So economic benefits delivered primarily by creating a basis for long-term returns. That's the first part of his argument. His argument would not like if you remove this part of the argument from the passage, like you will be it will be losing a major a very integral part of the argument will be lost, right? If you remove this part, it's quite integral to the author's argument. Next nodal idea is, however, the results are still uncertain, problematic, or impractical to obtain, right? So let's read this together, read these together. Economic benefits delivered primarily by creating a are delivered primarily by creating a basis for long-term returns. However, the results are still uncertain, problematic, or impractical to obtain. Other problems include the scarcity of urban landscape and the human cost of relocation. Hence, fiscal resources of the city can better be spent on more productive endeavors. So you can see that the central idea here is nothing but an amalgamation of the four major nodal ideas of the passage, right? So yeah, so we'll just read it one last time. I'll try to help you recall the diagram here and understand this. Sports mega events deliver economic benefit to host cities primarily by creating a basis for long-term returns, right? So if you recall the diagram where the dollar notes are operating cost is getting converted to that graph, right, of long-term returns. However, the modes for the same are usually unreliable. That means the author has demonstrated there are three ways in which that can be done, right? Advertisement for the city. Then the second one was advertisement for the city was the first one. Second was transportation and communication infrastructure, and the third one was facility, ongoing use of new facilities, right? He has demonstrated that all of them are unreliable, so that's what this part covers. Moreover, the paucity of landscape, and then he comes to the next set of last set of two problems, that moreover the paucity of urban landscape and the accompanying human cost. These were the two overarching problems. If you recall the problems that were mentioned in the bold font, right? Problem 2 and problem 3. Make a valid case for considering more productive avenues for fiscal expenditure, right? That's what he closes the paragraph with. So that's the central idea, guys. Okay. All right. So now we'll move on to questions. Okay, guys, so let's start with the questions for the passage, being done with the central idea. Before we start off, now for those of you who might have not attempted the passage by using the by using the link given in the description of the video, and you whom have decided to solve the questions as we go along as while watching the video, this might be a good point for you guys to pause the video and solve the first question, okay? Because in the next 4 to 5 3 or 4 after a brief pause of 3 to 4 seconds, I'll delve right into the question. Okay, all right. All right, so let's start. Now, before we start reading the question stem, I'd like to explain a small tool that we have here. You can see some abbreviations, a set of letters here, small capital S, a small s, small o, small e, capital E. Now, guys, these are basically markers or labels that we use to mark the options once we have assessed and judged those options, right? So, for example, the capital S abbreviation capital S stands for a strong selection. You'll mark an option with a capital S if you figure that that particular option seems to, you have substantial evidence to and you're very sure that that option is the correct option for that particular question, right? So in that case, you'll mark the option as a capital S. Small s is stands for weak selection. Small s stands for weak selection, which means that if you're, well, if you're sure but you're not very sure, like you still it would help if you can have some more evidence to support the option. The option seems to be correct, but some more evidence might help, or there might be some other option that you may not have read yet. which might be correct. So in that case, you mark that particular option as smallest. Then O is basically when you're unsure, when you're not able to select the option or even eliminate the option, and you best figure that the option should be put on hold for now, and you should check the other options. That's when you mark the option as small O. Small E is for weak elimination. That means you're almost sure that the option is not the correct option, but still you don't have sufficient evidence for that, or right. So in that case, you mark the option as small e. And finally, strong elimination, that the symbol for which is capital E. Capital E stands for strong elimination. Then it will be used as a marker for the options about which you're pretty sure that you have substantial evidence and you're sure that this is definitely incorrect, right, with respect to the question and the passage. So now, so these are the labels and the markers that we use. It's a very useful tool, and anyways, I'm not getting into the details of why this tool happens to be extremely useful. It's a simple tool, but it's an extremely it plays an instrumental role. It can play an instrumental role if you in terms of improving your accuracy and improving your speed of solving RCs. So, but I'm not getting into the depths of that because we anyways have planned to create a separate video to help you understand the rationale behind this tool. Okay, so I just explained this to you briefly so that you'll be able to understand how we assess and eliminate or select the options. All right, so let's start with the question. The question says, the central point of the first paragraph, is that, see, it says the first paragraph, not the first passage. We're talking just of the first paragraph, not the first passage, is that the economic benefits of the Olympic Games. Okay, so it has already given you the hint about the central point of the first paragraph, right? That means it has to be related to the economic benefits of the Olympic Games. Okay, so economic benefits of the Olympic Games are, well, you are supposed to fill in the blank here, right? You're supposed to find which of these four options will best complete the sentence, essentially. The central point of the first paragraph is that the economic benefits of the Olympic Games, right? So let's start with the first option. Uh, are shared equally among the three organizing committees. Okay, so we do recall that there was some content relating to how the revenue generated from the Olympics is, the majority share of it goes to the three committees, right? If you recall from the diagram, and I think the point of reference is somewhere here. Yeah, there you go. So it says these days the Summer Olympic Games themselves, the Summer Olympic Games themselves generate a total revenue of $4 billion to $5 billion, but the lion's share of this goes to the three committees basically. Now, so far as this option is concerned, guys, there are two reservations that we have against this option. First, when it comes to the passage says the passage talks about the revenue that is generated, right? It talks about the revenue that is generated. It does not talk about the economic benefits of the Olympic Games. Revenue generated from the Olympic Games and economic benefits of the Olympic Games are two different ideas. Economic benefits is a more umbrella, it's a more generalized term. The revenue generated will be one of the aspects of the economic benefits of the Olympic Games. So the passage does not say anything about the economic benefits being shared among the three organizing committees. It says there's a distortion here, right? So that's the first reservation we have against this option. It seems to imply that it is the economic benefits as opposed to the revenue that is shared among the three committees. Second reservation that we have, and that's a more serious uh, problem that we have with the passages, with the option is that it says that these benefits or the revenue, they are shared equally among the three organizing committees. So guys, the author has said that the revenue is shared among the three committees. That is, and in fact, he has also not said said exactly that the revenue is shared among the three committees, only among them. But he says that the majority of the share goes to them. But nowhere has he mentioned that in what proportion is the revenue shared among the three committees. Is it something like 50% of it goes to this committee, then another 33% goes to this, and then 16% goes to. He has not provided any kind of proportion here. So the option that we have here is kind of making an assumption on its own accord, right? The passage does not say anywhere that the revenue or whatever economic benefits have been shared equally. So that's a major drawback of this option, and hence we can eliminate this option. Definitely eliminate this option with a capital E. Okay, so I'm going to write that here. Next, coming to option number two. Option number two says Just let me get the highlighter. The benefits of the Olympic Games accrue mostly through revenue from advertisements. Please note this term is important. Revenue from advertisements and ticket sales. Okay. Now, what might have happened in the case of most of the learners is they might have inferred this to be correct from this particular point of reference, which is given here, right? Which says that any economic benefit would have to flow from the value of the games as an advertisement for the city. So, guys, what you need to understand here is that advertisement for the city is the expression advertisement for the city is not the same as the expression revenue from advertisements. And when you say revenue from advertisements, you're actually talking about the modes by which the Olympic Games generate direct revenue. The modes maybe by advertisements, maybe by ticket sales, and so on and so forth. But when you're talking about advertisement, the value flowing from the games as an advertisement for the city, you're in that case you're talking about the city getting pitched to getting pitched almost as a product or almost as a for example, during the Olympics, the city gets an opportunity to present itself as a potential destination for global tourists, right? Which might manifest into increased revenues of tourism for the city in the upcoming years, right? So that's what advertisement for the city means. That or that advertisement for the city is very different from revenue that is generated directly from the advertisements in the Olympic Games, right? Advertisement for the city is essentially the city being advertised as a good subject, or let's say, as I gave you the example of like a good tourist destination, or maybe a good potential investment geography for MNCs and conglomerates, right? We have already discussed the difference between these two ideas in the passage explanation part, right? So these two are very different ideas. So people, the learners who fell for this probably were not able to differentiate between these two. Okay, so so again we can eliminate even this option with a capital E. Okay, coming to the next one, option C, economic. It says economic benefits of the Olympic Games accrue to host cities, if at all, only in the long term. Guys, there are two different PORs provided in the first paragraph itself, which are evidence enough to show that this is in fact the central idea of the first paragraph. Okay, look at the first POR. It says that, well, whether do the sports mega events benefit the host city or not? It depends, but the prospects are less than rosy. The trick is converting. Look at this point. The trick is converting several $billion in operating costs during the 17-day fiesta of the games into a basis for long-term returns, right? That's what it means. That means the benefit can accrue, but only in the long term. But only in the long term. It can accrue, but only in the long term. That's the essence of the. He's already given the essence of the paragraph right here in the first part, and then he further exemplifies, the essence of the first paragraph by listing out the ways in which this can happen. What are the ways? Any economic benefit would have to flow from the value of the games as an advertisement for the city. The three ways that we discussed here, right? Or the new transport and communications infrastructure that was created for the games, or the ongoing use of new facilities, right? So yes, so these two PORs confirm beyond any reasonable doubt that this is definitely seems to be the correct option. So we can mark this option as with capital S here. Okay, I'm gonna mark it as capital S. Let's move on to the next and the final option. The last option says that economic benefits of the Olympic Games are usually eroded by expenditure incurred by the host city. And the problem, again, there are two problems with this option. First of all, this option seems to imply that there were in fact some economic benefits generated, right? Because, well, to be able to erode the economic benefits by expenditure, you in the first place you need to have some economic benefits generated, right? Without having had any economic benefit generated, how can you erode the same, right? So first of all, it implies that there was some economic benefit generated, which the author is definitely against, because the author anyways believes that economic benefits can only be generated in the long term by converting the operating cost of the games involved in the games into a basis for long-term returns, as he says that in this line, right? So he's totally against the idea that economic benefits may have been generated in the short term. So the implication of this option, first of all, is the problem. The implication that there is already some economic benefit generated that could be eroded. That implication is a problem. Second, it also says that they are usually eroded by expenditure incurred by the host city. Nowhere in the passage is there a mention that the economic benefit is getting eroded. The economic benefit is getting eroded by the expenditure is not mentioned anywhere. The author does mention, fair enough, granted that the author does mention that there could be better use of managing fiscal resources, but that's something that's been mentioned in the last paragraph. And in that case, what is getting eroded are the fiscal resources, not the economic benefits. So, anyways, you cannot take this up here. This is not at all relevant here, right? Erosion by expenditure incurred by the host city. This idea is again not mentioned anywhere in the passage. This is, in fact, this comes very close to being an error of inclusion here. Okay. Okay, by the way, about this box here, EOI, EOF, EOD, EOC, TBNR, and UA, these are basically the various types of errors, the various types of incorrect options that you may come across in an RC. And again, we're going to have a theoretical session that explains to you this in detail. And then for now, we'll stick to the RCs, but we will, don't worry, we'll have a theoretical session that explains all of these details to you. Okay, so anyhow, coming back to the option, we can, on account of those two factors, we can eliminate this option with a capital E again, right? Beyond any reasonable doubt. So that's about it, and hence your correct answer in this case will be, well, option C will be the correct answer. Okay, so yeah, so with that, I think we are done with the first question. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, guys, so let's come to question number 2. Now, for those of you who have not attempted the question yet, this is the point where you can pause the video and go through the question and mark your answer. Okay, I'm gonna go on go to the next screen and explain the question now. Okay, guys, so starting with the first option, let's read the question once first. So, sports facilities built for the Olympics are not fully utilized after the games are over because of which of these reasons, right? We can gauge from this that the discussion is about the underutilization of the sports facilities, right? Which if you recall, it refers to the third point here of the passage, right? The third way in which the host cities could benefit economically from the games was by the continued usage of the new facilities that have been developed, which he talks about here, or the ongoing use of new facilities. And then he also addresses that why this way turns out to be dubious and problematic, and he has given specifics and examples. And that's the point of reference, which is in this section of the passage that we'll be looking at. Okay, so let's go through the point of reference here. We are considering the before considering the first option, we will let's just read the point of reference here. So it says, let me get the highlighter. Okay, it says the facilities benefit. That means this third benefit, the third benefit, this new facilities benefit, is the facilities benefit is dubious at best for buildings such as velodromes and natatoriums, and problematic for 1 lakh seat Olympic stadiums, right? So see, the scale component has come in here, as you can notice here. It does, like the scale at which these facilities and the sports infrastructure has been built, it does seem to be a problem. He's tried to emphasize that in the passage. The latter is basically the 1 lakh seat Olympic stadiums. They require conversion plan for the future use, and the former are usually doomed to near vacancy. All right, doomed to near vacancy. This basically shows that we are at the right point of reference, because the question is about why the sports facilities are not utilized. So this is the correct point of reference here. Hosting the summer games generally requires 30 plus sports venues and dozens of training centers. Today, the bird's nest in Beijing sits virtually empty. Today, the bird's nest in Beijing sits virtually empty, while the Olympic Stadium in Sydney costs some $30 million a year to operate. Right? See, the author has, in fact, maybe in a slightly convoluted way, has provided the reasons or the causes for the fact that sports facilities which are built for the Olympics, they are not fully utilized after the games are over. And he's given that here. You just look at this. That the facilities benefit. This benefit is dubious for these velodromes and natatoriums, and problematic for these large, huge infrastructure. That means scale is definitely a problem, right? Scale is definitely a problem. So one of the reasons seems to be scale, and and another reason seems to be the expenditure, the cost of operating them, which is provided here. It says that the Olympic Stadium in Sydney costs more than $30 million a year to operate. So those two can be distilled out as a couple of reasons, right? Some of the primary reasons why the sports facilities built for Olympics are not fully utilized after the games are over. And let's now read. Although we have already got into the first option a bit, but let's read the first option completely. So, sports facilities built for the Olympics are not fully utilized after the games are over because their scale and the costs of operating them are large. So this option takes care of both the aspects here. If you notice, it takes care of the aspect of scale, right? It takes care of the aspect of scale. Let me use a different ink here. Yeah, it takes care of the aspect of scale, which is mentioned, which has been mentioned here in the point of reference, and also takes care of the, the point relating to the costs of operating them. So yes, both of these points have been mentioned in the point of reference here. Okay, have been mentioned in the point of reference here, and hence this option can be considered either as a weak or a strong selection, mainly as a strong selection, but I'll still be slightly on the cautious side because we have not read the rest of the three options, and we might just come across a better option. Who knows? So I'm going to mark this as a small s, and we'll move on to the next option now. Okay, coming to option number 2. Let me just erase this part. Okay, option 2 says that they are not fully utilized after the games are over because their location is away from the city. Us because their location away from the city center usually limits easy access. Okay, so the author throughout the passage has made many points or arguments about how the economic benefits, how these events hardly ever provide any economic benefit to the host cities, but nowhere has he given as this as one of the reasons. Nowhere has he mentioned in the passage that the location of these sports facilities away from the city. He has not even said that the location is away from the city. In fact, has talked about how how this infrastructure takes up the scarce urban landscape. They end up using the scarce urban landscape. So this is in fact factually incorrect. He's nowhere talked about uh, their location being away or close from the city, or he has implied it to be at the city, in the city, in fact, and limitations of easy access for the people of the city. So yes, this is definitely an error of inclusion here because these things have not been talked about in the passage at all, right? So option B will be a case which will regard as your error of inclusion. Option A seemed all right. Okay, so let's come to the next one. No, option C. The authorities do not adapt them to local conditions. The authorities do not adapt them to local conditions. Okay, so the facilities for the Olympics are not fully utilized after the games are over because the authorities do not adapt to the. Okay, now see, guys, as much as we agree that the author has talked about the fact or the idea that the later, right, these Olympic stadiums, they require a conversion. The latter require a conversion plan for future use. Okay, so from that you can we might like we can say that the author may be implying that yes, conversion plans are maybe not in place, but we cannot go as far as assuming that the authorities in fact do not adapt them to local conditions, right? He has not been explicit about whether the actions of the authorities, and we cannot make that assumption on our part. No, right, we cannot go outside the purview of the passage. All he has said is that they require conversion, they require a conversion plan. These huge infrastructures require a conversion plan, and that's it. He doesn't talk about whether the authorities should be converting, but they don't do it, or whether they do it but not properly. He's not commented anywhere on that aspect, on those points. So again, this happens to be an error of inclusion. This is again a second instance of the error of inclusion here. Even option C will be regarded as an error of inclusion. Okay, let's come to the next one now. Option D. Option D, guys, it says that facilities are not fully utilized after the games are over because they become outdated. They become outdated, having been built with the little planning and under time pressure. Wow. I'm quite sure that many learners may have fallen. A substantial number of learners may have fallen for this particular option. The reason, I'll tell you what the reason is. Because if you see the line here that says being built with little planning and under time pressure. This is something that the author has in fact talked about here. Just read this line. Let's come to this part, the point of reference. Part of the problem is that Olympics planning takes place in a frenzied and time pressure atmosphere. That is in a very chaotic atmosphere of intense competition with the other prospective host cities, not optimal conditions for contemplating the future shape of an urban landscape. So yes, there is a discussion about little planning having been undertaken and the structures being built, uh, the infrastructure being built under time pressure and with little planning. But guys, please understand, the passage specifically refers to the urban landscape, building infrastructure when it related to the urban landscape and not to the sports facilities and not to the sports facilities that the question talks about here. The question, just one second. Yeah. It does not relate to the sports facilities that the question is that is which is relevant, which is the relevant point of the question. The question doesn't want you to answer why the urban landscape is not in a situation which can be useful to the city after the games are over. The question wants you to answer why the sports facilities are not in such a condition that they are not used after the games are over, right? So the point about so point so what I'm saying is that the point that has been made about just one second. Yeah, I was just looking for the highlighters. Excuse that. So the author in the passage has made these points about time pressure and atmosphere and chaotic atmosphere during planning, not suboptimal conditions for planning, and so on and so forth, relating to the urban landscape, mainly relating to the urban landscape, okay, and not related to sports facilities. So this is a very classic case. Option D is a very classic case of an error of distortion here, and that's how we're going to note it here. Option D will be an error of distortion. Okay, and yeah, so now you have basically your just to summarize, we selected the first option. We selected the first option on account of two aspects: the scale and the cost of operating, both of the terms are warranted here from the point of reference that we looked at here. The second option will be eliminated with a capital E, mainly due to their location being away. These points have not been mentioned anywhere in the passage, so that's why you eliminate this very easily. So far as option C is concerned, again, because of authorities and the local conditions, and these points are also outside the purview of the passage. So again, you eliminate them very easily. And finally, this will be an error of distortion, as I already explained. So you'll eliminate this also with a capital D, right? So that will be your mode of answering for this particular question. I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next one. All right, guys. So let's start with the third question. Now, for those of you who have not attempted this question, well, this is your window. You can pause the video at this point of time, attempt the question, and then unpause and continue. Okay, I'll just wait for a second or two and then start. All right, then. So let's start. The question states, let's read the question stem first. It states that the author feels that the games place a burden on the host city for all of the following reasons, except, wow. So before we delve into the subject matter of the question stem, I want to talk a little bit about this except here, especially this category of questions which have this except word here. Now this is a category of questions which I call which I refer to as the triple TF scenario. The scenario where you come across a question which has the word except, which involves the word except, I call it the triple TF scenario because the reason is usually what happens is that in most of the questions, when you don't have words like except, which are not inverted questions, you're supposed to select the option. Your correct option is, your answer is the option which is true as per the passage, right? Which is true as per the passage, correct? But in this case, it's just the scenario is inverted. In this case, the options which are supposed to be true as per the passage, which are true as per the passage, are supposed to be eliminated. You're supposed to select the option which is false as per the passage, right? You can see that the author feels that the games place a burden on the host city for all of the following reasons. That means all the following reasons which the author does feel that are the reasons, are the causes why the games place a burden on the host city, cannot be selected. Okay, the one that will be selected is the one which the author might not agree with or which the author might not have mentioned, right? So essentially, in such scenarios, you're supposed to select the false option, which is just the opposite of most of the other questions, right? And that's the reason why often what happens is that learners, because they are so used to selecting the true option as the answer, they end up committing silly mistakes here. Okay, they might just come across an option which they are able to recall, oh yes, this was mentioned somewhere here, and hence they just mark their answer and then they move on. What they forget during the course of reading the options is that you are not supposed to select the true option. You are supposed to eliminate the true option and select this false option. Anyhow, so regarding this as a separate triple TF scenario and being mindful of this helps you, helps you be cognizant, consistently helps you have the presence of mind continuously that there are three options which are true, which have to be eliminated, and there is one option which is false that needs to be selected. Hence the triple TF, three trues and one false. Okay. All right. So with that out of the way, let's get back into the questions 10 now. So the author feels that this game plays a burden on the host city for all of the following reasons, except, okay, see, games placing a burden on the host city. Now this is basically, this relates to the part of the passage where the author has listed out some problems, right? He has listed out the first problem in terms of planning that takes place for the infrastructure planning. The second, while the second problem is with respect to the urban scarcity, the scars getting urban landscape, and third problem is related to the relocation problem, right? The human cost, basically. Now, the author feels that the games place a burden on the host city. Which of these three problems would agree with this expression? The burden on the host city, right? The planning problem does not affect the city directly. The planning problem is basically, uh, well, it does affect the city, but the planning problem is still more intrinsic in nature. It affects the city in an indirect manner. But the second and third problem, they are more extrinsic, right? That even if the first problem is resolved, the scarcity of the urban real estate is still a problem. It is still scarcely available. The human cost of mobilization is still remains, right? Still remains to be the case for real, right? Even if you solve the problem of planning, let's say, that's what he has talked about, that even the, let's say, even if they have future use, are they the best use of the precious urban real estate? And then further, the cities must consider the human cost and so on and so forth. So the point I'm trying to make here is that your question mainly relates to the two problems that have been mentioned here, two extrinsic problems that have been mentioned here, which are basically examples of how the games place a burden on the host city, right? And hence the options that relate to these problems or that relate to that point of reference here in the last two paragraphs will be the options which will be true according to the author, and hence we can eliminate the ones that does not relate to anything that has been mentioned in the passage will be the incorrect option. Okay, so let's start with the first option then. It says, the first option says that, uh, they divert, the games place a burden on the host city because they divert scarce urban land from more productive uses. Yes, he has mentioned this here. If you note this here, he has mentioned it here, right? This another part of the problem is that urban land is generally scarce and growing scarcer. The new facilities often stand for decades or longer, even if they have future use. Are they the best use of precious urban real estate, guys? I hope we do realize here that this is not an actual question that the author has posed. This is a rhetorical question. rhetorical question in the sense that the author doesn't really mean to ask that, okay, are they the best use of precious urban real estate, but rather he intends to emphasize that there must be some different alternative of using the precious real estate than building infrastructure for mega events here, right? So that's the point he's trying to make here. And the first option completely agrees with this. It says that the author feels the games place a burden on the host city because they divert scarce urban land from more productive uses. So yes, so this is something that the author will agree with, and hence this is a scenario which will be true, and hence you cannot mark this as your answer. This will not be your answer. You need to mark the answer that will not be true, right? As we noted earlier. Anyhow, let's come to the next one. They in The author feels that the games place burden on the host city because they involve the demolition of residential structures to accommodate sports facilities and infrastructure. Yes, that's exactly your problem number three, right? The first option was the first option here was related to your problem number two. The first option related to problem two. I'm going to write P2 here, and the second option relates to problem number three here, which has been mentioned here. So the point of reference for this is right here, as you can see. It says further cities must consider the human cost. Residential areas often are raised and citizens relocated without proper adequate preparation or compensation. So yes, the author does feel that the games place a burden on the host city because they involve the demolition of residential structures to accommodate sports facilities and infrastructure. So again, no, this will not be the answer. This is just something that you can again eliminate. Okay, be careful about the triple TF scenario. So you can eliminate this option as well. Okay, let's be consistent with the ink. All right, so coming to the next option then, the third option. It says that the finances games place a burden on the host city because the finances used to fund the games could be better used for other purposes. Now, if you're not careful, if you're not being careful while reading the last line of the passage, you might just figure that option C is probably something that the author has not commented upon. But no, he has commented upon that. Especially, note the word fiscal resources. He says that there are, after all, other productive uses that can be made of vanishing fiscal resources. The fiscal resources is what the word finances refers to here. Okay, it refers to the fiscal resources of the government, the government revenue. So he's essentially saying that yes, the government revenue can be put to more productive uses than using them in hosting the mega events or Olympics. So yes, so again, even option C completely is in line with this conclusion that the author has drawn here. It closes with making a case for better use of fiscal resources, right? So even this is true. When this is true, and this is given in the concluding part of the passage. So we have eliminated three options, so we can most probably the fourth one has to be the answer. uh, okay, so coming to the next last option, it says that the influx of visitors during the games places a huge strain on the urban infrastructure. Okay, see, the influx of visitors during the games, the author, as much as he has talked about the costs involved and the problems related to creating such huge infrastructure in the host city, but he nowhere has he said anything about the influx of visitors. At some point it might seem like there is implied that, but he has never been explicit about the strain that is placed on the urban infrastructure directly due to the influx of visitors, right? So this is not something that we can assume from our part. Although, note that this idea that the influx of visitors during games does place a huge strain on the urban infrastructure in reality, in real life, might actually be true. That's fair. That's not a problem at all. But the thing is, we cannot consider anything that comes from outside the purview of the passage. Like you need to necessarily stick to the passage to the content that is given in the passage, even if the option that is meant that's given here might be true in real life. You cannot allow that. You cannot allow that. So this will be a clear case of an error of inclusion. Okay, I'm gonna note option D here. The case of error of inclusion, and hence this will be the false option and your correct answer. Okay, so I hope that is clear to everyone, and with that we're done with the questions. We'll now move on to the next section. Okay guys, so coming to the next section of your tutorial, that is passage vocabulary. Now in this section we'll be going through some going through the words that you might have found a little challenging while reading the passage. Okay, and wherever applicable, we'll discuss the meaning of the word. We'll talk about the context. Will mainly primarily stick to the contextual meaning of the word. So please understand that for every word can have a slightly different meaning depending on the context that it is being used in. And hence, in this case, the words that we shall discuss here will be mainly focusing on the contextual meaning of the word here. We'll stick to that. And wherever applicable, we'll also try to dissect the word etymologically, right? So that means we'll try to look into the roots of the words that it derives from. So yeah, so let's start. The first word is prospects. Now, prospects, guys, is a word that comes from the roots. The first root is pro, which stands for forward. It's a Latin word. It stands for forward or right forward. And the second, the specs part comes from the root, the word specio, which is again Latin, and it stands for to look or to see something. To look or to see something, right? So prospect basically means, so the context of the passage prospect basically stood for I think the sentence went something like that: the prospects are less than rosy, right? Can do the mega events benefit the host cities? Well, we don't. It depends on certain factors, but the prospects, that means the possibility, that means the likelihood of that happening, right, is less than rosy. So that means prospects basically in this context meant the likelihood of occurrence of a future event. In this case, the future event was an economic benefit being getting accrued to the host cities by the mega event, right? So that is prospects. The word prospects can be used in some other contexts as well. Like for example, you might use it in context such as, what would be my prospects once I complete my B school education? What would be my career prospects, right? So you're talking about your career possibilities, the career path that you could take, you'll be able to take once you complete your B school education. Another slightly different context in which this can be used, right? So, all right, let's come to, and that slightly different context will obviously have, in that case, the word will also, have a slightly different meaning. But in that case, it means career possibilities or career paths, career prospects, right? Uh, so, what will be the options available in a sense? All right, let's come to the next word, fiesta. Now, fiesta is an interesting word. It comes from the root festum, festum. I think festum is also a Greek, is also a Latin root, is also a Latin word that stands for basically festival. As simple as that. Stands for a festival. Okay. Please bear with my handwriting. Okay. I know. It might seem barely legible, but I'm trying to make it as legible for you guys as possible. Please do bear. All right. So festum stands for festival, and yeah, it's a Latin term. So fiesta also comes from the same term. I think fiesta is the Spanish format of that version of that. Fiesta basically means a festival, an event that is marked by celebration, as you can see. All right. So dubious. Dubious comes from the term dubium, uh, dubium. That is Latin for a doubt. Okay, Latin for a doubt. So if you're dubious about something, that means you're doubtful about something. You're uncertain about something. You're kind of unconfirmed. You're not very sure about it, right? So yeah, velodromes. We already discussed this while discussing the passage, while going through the passage explanation. Velodromes, by the way, again comes from two roots. So velo is a term that is used for bicycle. Okay, in French. So yeah, it's a French term that is used that stands for bicycle, and drome is a Greek term. Is a Greek term that stands for Greek root that stands for any kind of running track or running course, right? So that's a drome. So course or track. So velodrome is basically the bicycle a stadium with a banked a cycle racing track. That's what a velodrome is. Coming to natatorium, natatorium is guys is basic. Natatorium again comes from the root. I think this is a yeah. Natar is the Latin root, which stands for natar stands for to swim. Okay, stands for to swim, and the stands for to swim, and so natatorium is basically an indoor swimming pool. So in this context, it will the natatorium is a reference to the swimming pool where all the swimming related events would take place in the Olympics or such other such mega events. Frenzied. Oh, frenzied is a very simple term. I think it's quite frequented. Frenzied basically means very in a very chaotic state, in a state of panic or being very frenetic, as opposed to being calm. For example, let's say a friend of yours, he found himself in quite a frenzied state after he heard the news about his friend's accident. Right, that means he was struck by a state of panic. He was in a state of panic and he was not calm at all. Right, so he was in a frenzied state. All right, so let's come to the next one. Prospective. Now, the word prospective has the same roots as the word prospect, and it basically stands. I think in this case, the context was that the planning for the construction of the infrastructure takes place by the host by the prospective host cities takes place in an extremely frenzied state, right? So prospective basically means something to be, something that is expected to be. For example, if I use this term prospective in a slightly different context, let's say I went to meet the prospective client. That means I went to meet a person who might become my client in the future. So he's a prospective client, right? Expected to be a client, who's a potential client. So prospective host cities would be host cities which are expected to, well, host the Olympics in the future. So that's prospective. So all right, next term, contemplate. Contemplate simply means to consider, to think about something at length, to consider something or to scrutinize something at length, right? Right. Pensively sitting and thinking about or mulling over some idea, right? So that's what contemplate means, mulling over an idea. I'm gonna write that down here for you. Mulling over something. Okay, I'm not writing the whole word here. So mulling over something or contemplating something, scrutinizing over something, right? Thinking about something. Let's come to the next word, raised. Raised raised comes from the term raser, which is a French term to, well, to shave closely, right? So when you say raised in this case, the author has used the word raised to say that residential complex or residential areas are raised down, right? That means they're completely destroyed. They're completely wiped over so as to make space for the uh, infrastructure, to make space for the sports infrastructure of for the events, right? So that's where he has used the word raised here, to demolish something, to completely tear down something. That's what raised is. Fiscal. Fiscal again comes from an interesting term, which is again a Latin term. See, most of the words, as you can see, are many, not at least in this case, in this slide, are derived from Latin roots. So fiscal is derived from fiscus. Okay, fiscal is derived from fiscus. Just one second. It's actually fiscus, Fiscus, and fiscus basically is a term that means purse or treasury, right? So fiscal relates to government's revenue, mainly that the government gets via taxes, right? So that's from where the government basically gets its revenue from taxes. So that's what fiscal relates to. That the author basically believes that the government will be better off spending the vanishing fiscal resources, that means its revenue, on other productive uses than investing in hosting mega events like the Olympics. All right. So yeah, guys. So that's about the noteworthy vocabulary of this particular passage. If you still have some doubts remaining, you can just put them down in the comment section. And yeah, so we'll stop this section here, and then now we'll move on to the RC analysis part. Okay, guys. So let's start with the penultimate section of the discussion, that is the analysis of the RC. Now, there are four parameters on which we'll analyze this RC. The first one is the genre from which the RC, the domain of language from which the from to which the RC belongs. Second is the readability. Now, readability basically means how easy or difficult to read was the passage. Third, irrespective of the questions, this depends just on the passage, not on the questions. Okay, and the length of the passage, and finally, like what would have been an ideal duration of time to solve this passage in a CAT scenario, an actual exam scenario, that is. Okay, so let's start with the first parameter, which is genre. Genre of Audit RC was economics and management. Now, why is this relevant? Why is it important to know, to discuss what genre the particular RC or passage belong to? The reason is, guys, see, let's suppose you found this passage to be particularly difficult to read. Okay, and I'm not talking about the questions as of now. I'm just talking about the passage itself. Like suppose while reading the passage, if you found it substantially challenging, that then one of the probable reasons, that then this is not the only exclusive reason, but one of the probable reasons could be that maybe you're not very well versed or familiar with content of this genre. Okay, and then if that's the case, the better way to practice and the more targeted way to practice and to get quick improvements would be to get more exposure for content of the content from this genre, right? And that's the reason why I am in fact the whole course is structured in a way so that we solve five passages from one genre, and then like one, and likewise we do it for eight different genres. So this is the economics and management genre's first passage. So yeah, the genre was of course economics and management. Next parameter, readability. Now for the readability, to gauge the readability of the passage, we are using here something called the Flesch Kincaid grade level scale, which rates a passage on a scale of 0 to 18. Okay, every from 0 to 18, any kind of content that you put into this algorithm gives you a particular score, a particular readability score for that content, right? This is something that is very easily available online, and you can yourself Google this and figure out the readability of any content that you want to figure out. And then like this I selected this particular scale after substantial research, research in terms of figuring out which scale is most ubiquitously and most prevalently used for passages in general, for articles, passages, and books in general to gauge the readability. So this one seemed to be the most appropriate, and that's why we have taken up this scale. So 0 to 18. This particular passage was rated as 11.6 at an index of 11.6 on a 0 to 18 scale. That means it was kind of moderate in nature. Most of your CAT passages would lie in this range from 10 to 13 to 14 and sometimes to 14.5 probably. And your ZAT passage might often fall in the range of 13, 14, 15, 16. Hardly ever would a passage go above the range of 16.5 or 17 or something, right? So generally they lie in this particular range. And the passages from the even more easier exams would probably, the readability of those passages would probably be somewhere here. But please do keep into account the idea that the difficulty of the RC and the difficulty of the passage are not the same thing. Okay, there might be a passage which is difficult to read, but because of the questions being substantially easy, the RC might be not so difficult. Or there might be a passage that might be easy to read, which might rate low on a readability scale, but because because the options were really subtle and nuanced, and the questions were really difficult to understand, the RC might in turn end up becoming being difficult, right? So readability just tells you about the readability of the past, but yes, it does matter for us as an aspirant. If you're able to easily and quickly comprehend the essence from passages which are rated higher on the readability scale, like that can definitely benefit you. Okay, so yeah, so that's the second parameter. Let's come to the third one, passage length. So guys, we're not going to look at the passage length directly in terms of total number of words. We'll basically we'll rather use a parameter which is more like number of words per question. So number of words that you have to read for getting an opportunity to answer one question, one single question. So for this passage, the total number of words was 342. So that, and three questions, that means that gives you a figure of 114 words per question. Now, for cat RCs in general, and especially if I stick to the recent cat RCs in the last 5 years, or maybe if at max, if I consider RCs only in this of this millennium until late until the early 2000s, the average number of words to be read for every question to be answered that you get to answer in the cat RC is around 100, is around 100. That's generally the average. Please, guys, this there might be often there might be a difference of plus minus 10 to 15 to 20%, but generally it averages around this, right? And so that's basically a benchmark that you can use to gauge how lengthy or how not so lengthy the passage was. In this case, well, 114 words per question is not that lengthy. It's slightly on the lengthier side, but not that lengthy again. For a really lengthy passage, this figure, this parameter would shoot up to around 150 words per question, or maybe 160 words per question, like that. So yeah. Finally, this last parameter, time to solve. Time to solve, according to me, for this passage, the ideal time. Okay, see, first of all, I'm not talking about the time that you will take to solve this passage while you're practicing, or while you're still preparing, or while you're still developing your comprehension and question answering skills, right? Problem solving skills here. That's not the time I'm talking about here. This is the ideal time that you need to aim for. This is the time that you should basically aim for to get like you should aim for to get into a situation that by the time by the time you have to appear for CAT, you have developed your comprehension and your problem solving skills to such an extent that you are able to solve a passage from this genre of this readability level and of this length in a period of just 6 to 7 minutes, right? Where I would allot the passage reading time to 2 to 2.5 minutes, and the times allocated for answering questions to 4 minutes. Okay, so yeah, so you know where you how much time you may have taken for reading the passage and answering the question, and you can accordingly plan your corrective steps here on. Okay, all right. So we are done with the RC analysis here. Let's next we'll talk about the takeaways and what are the learnings from this session or this particular RC. Okay. Okay, guys. So the learnings, actionables or takeaways from this session can be talked about or discussed in across four categories. The first one of which is exposure. And what do I mean when I say exposure? So, guys, the passage that you may have you read or you attempted, and then, mind you, I'm talking about the passage. I'm not talking about the whole RC. The RC involves the passage as well as the questions and the options. I'm talking just about the passage here. So let's suppose for those of you who found some sort of difficulty or challenge while reading the passage itself. Okay, forget about the questions for now. Just the passage. In terms of, it could have been in terms of the vocabulary involved, it could have been in terms of the genre that you were reading. Maybe you're not so well versed with content from the economics and management genre. So right, so all of that is categorized under the header of exposure, right? So that basically how well you'll be able to understand a passage from a certain genre or with certain kind of vocabulary or certain writing style depends on how much of an exposure you've had with that genre, with that kind of vocabulary and that kind of writing style, right? So uh, and that's the reason why, if you found it challenging for this passage, maybe you need to look into, maybe you need to check that, are you sufficiently familiar with the genre? Are you sufficiently familiar with the vocabulary, the kind of vocabulary that is involved here? For example, fiscal revenues was an expression that was used towards the end of the passage here, right? Now many learners might, I'm not saying many of you guys might already know that fiscal revenues relate with government budget, right? Government revenues here. But for those of you who did not, maybe you can definitely, some exposure in that domain, in that genre will definitely be helpful for you, right? So the first factor is exposure. So ensure that you work on your exposure in terms of the genre, vocabulary, etc. Okay. Second factor is the passage. And there's no need to be confused here. When I talked about exposure, I was talking about the kind of background that you may require to be able to be in a comfortable position to make sense of the passage. But when I write passage here, I'm not talking about the passage as such here. I'm talking about the meta level skills, or the skills that might be required over and above the exposure that you may have had in that genre to solve the passage in a short period of time with complete comprehension, right? So what I'm talking about is the ability to to infer the nodal ideas of the passage, the main ideas of the passage, or the ability to derive the to derive accurately and correctly and quickly the central idea of the passage. The ability to maintain, the ability to know which parts of the passage you should have read with rapt attention at a gradual pace, and which parts of the passage you could have gone through, you could have sifted through really quickly, right? So those are the meta level skills that I'm talking about when I say passage here. These two are two different aspects, right? And anyhow, I'll be making videos on fundamentals of these, how to read an RC, how to improve your speed, how to derive central idea from nodal ideas, and how to note the nodal ideas. I'll anyways be creating separate theoretical content on that. But meanwhile, that's also something for you to consider. Next comes the questions, of course. Now, see guys, the questions, every RC question is not always the same. There are some RC questions which pertain to main idea or central idea of the passage. There are some RC questions which are kind of inverted, like we came across the triple TF scenario, right? Where you have the words like except, where generally learners end up making silly errors. And then there are some RC questions which pertain to the passage structure, right? It might often happen that if you're observant enough, you might figure out that the questions that you're generally getting wrong belong to a certain category, and that can really help you speed up your process of preparation and getting your scores high, right? So that's definitely something for you to consider. Figure out what are the kind of past questions that you're generally getting wrong. Okay. Last and definitely not the least, this is one of the most important aspects of solving an RC. And I believe it's highly underrated in general. Options, and primarily eliminating the skill of being able to eliminate options is something that plays a very crucial role when it comes to improving your accuracy as well as speed. And yes, I am talking about speed, because learners end up spending a huge amount of time sometimes in deciding between, when they're stuck between options. Like they'll go like, okay, it should be A probably because of this, or no, it should be B because of this. But then again, they'll keep vacillating between the options, and like the clock keeps ticking, right, all the while. So definitely, that's something that you need to look into. Again, taking note of the kind of options that you're generally falling for might be a good idea, might be in fact a great idea. For instance, there were a good number of options, good number of incorrect options in this particular RC that were of the category that could be categorized as errors of distortion, right? And if you figure out, if you find that you generally end up falling for error of distortions, that means you need to work on those kind of errors, right? Anyhow, so those are the four categories in which you can categorize your takeaways, and this is an analysis that you'll have to do for yourself. What I until I've created, I've created videos for each of these sections separately, uh, for the passage meta level skills, and the question categorization skills, and option elimination topics, or topics pertaining to all of these three categories. Until then, you'll have to do some analysis by yourself, and then I'll soon be coming up with videos pertaining to all three of these. Meanwhile, for now, what I can definitely do is I can provide you some further reading, some material for further readings. These are basically articles which have been derived from the same source as that passage, which have been taken from the same source as the passage. The passage was taken from New York Times. In fact, even the topic is quite similar. That particular passage and these articles were part of the same debate. Okay, it was part of the same debate in that article. You can check the link of these articles in the description, right? So if you want to improve your exposure, if you want to further improve your exposure and in this genre, and you want to get some more, allow yourself some more room to allow your comprehension skills some more room to improve or expand, these articles are definitely something that you can check out, right? So yeah, uh, I've also provided here you the value of some of the parameters here, the difficulty level of both of these articles in terms of readability, 11.8 and 12.8. The RC that we solved was 11.6, so these are slightly more difficult, not much. So that will also help you get a hang of the scale, and the number of words, and the expected reading time, the ideal expected reading time given the number of words of these articles. Okay, so the links to both the articles can be found in the description. And the one final slide that I'll take you through, guys, now is the course map, the detailed course map. So, see, currently we solved, in this session, we solved the first RC of the first genre, which was economics and management. And this is just the first week. And then, like, there will be, as I already told you in the introduction, we'll be uploading RCs every weekday. That is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Saturdays, we'll have the live doubt clearing session for these RCs. And post that, like the same thing, the same cycle will continue for 8 more weeks, where where we'll do the same for 8 different genres. That means 40 RCs to cover. So if you're someone who's interested, who might be interested in improving your VRC scores in a short duration of time, in a period of just 8 to 10 weeks, we'll also have some more courses coming up after these 8 week course. And the channel is also supposed to have courses coming up on the verbal ability part, that is the paragimbals and odd one out and parasymmetry, etc. So if you're someone who's interested in improving your course in a practical manner, uh, and in a short span of time, using logical insights, and if you also happen to be someone who liked this session, okay, who liked the way the session was conducted, at least some aspects of it, this course is definitely something that you should follow. Okay, that'd be my suggestion. And yeah, so with that, I think it's time to say goodbye. So, guys, I hope you guys liked the session, and if you did, uh, do let me know in the comment section. Do let us know in the comment section. That will be really motivating for all of us here. And yeah, so with that, have a good day. Signing off. Sluggers Blue for Cat VRC. Signing off. Goodbye, guys. Take care.